is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. It's Friday. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Oh, there's so much I want to say that I can't say. One day I will. One day I will. All right, folks. A lot to get to here, but before I get to the meat of the matter, there's a lot of celebration going on in the media today, including at the National Journal. What's the National Journal? Good question. Rebecca Kaplan writes about 400,000 dreamers. Ugh, just the way we propagandize to ourselves. These are illegal alien children. And you know what? They're not all children. Some of them are in their 30s. About 400,000 dreamers have been allowed to stay in the United States in the years since the Obama administration began accepting applications for young illegal aliens to defer deportation proceedings and receive work permits, according to information compiled by blah, blah, blah. And for many of you, your Republican National Committee today endorsed a DREAM Act. Who the hell are these people at the Republican National Committee? I guess I should be careful because my name keeps swirling around as a possible moderator at these Republican primary debates. First brought up, last week or 10 days ago by the communications director, and now they've added in other hosts and so forth. Well, fine. I've accepted. I said yes. And they don't get back to us, Mr. Producer. Would you do me a favor, Mr. Producer, seriously, on Monday? I want you to call Reince Priebus's office and say, your boss, Mark Levin, has accepted. Now, where do we sign? Let's stop the games, which is what they are, and get an answer. It's not because I want to do it, because I want to expose this joke of an issue. If they say yes, then I will do it. But I suspect it's nothing more than that. The numbers show that out of more than 500,000 applicants for deferred action, more than three-quarters were accepted and just 1% denied. That's amazing. So just 1% of these 400,000 applicants were approved. They must all be perfect. You know, it's very interesting. I don't think less than 1% of the American citizen population is this perfect. Do you? Let me tell you what's going on here. They're barely being vetted. Barely being vetted. I mean, how can they be vetted? How would it work? How would it work? You're here illegally? Yes. Do you have papers? Well, I guess you don't have papers. No, I don't. When were you born? Well, I guess it doesn't matter when you were born. That's right. Do you have a record? Well, I guess you don't have a record because you're not even supposed to be here. Correct? Correct. All right, you're in. How else would you do it? Meanwhile, the disintegration of our voting system continues apace because now it is a civil right, a human right, not to have a photo ID when you vote. Poor Pennsylvania. The state legislature passed and the governor signed a voter ID law, and they call it a strict voter ID. Well, what is a non-strict voter ID? You can have a photo, but it's not you? Oh, yes, okay, come on in. Anybody's photo? What's a strict photo ID? Is it one with your actual face on it? But this, again, is how the media writes this stuff. The Associated depressed Peter Jackson. A state judge on Friday barred enforcement of Pennsylvania's strict voter identification law in the November 5 general election. Now, full disclosure, Landmark Legal Foundation has been involved in this case, as we've been involved in other cases. The state also cannot require local elections officials to verbally tell voters at the polls that photo IDs could be required in future elections. You believe this? But officials can distribute written material about the law. Commonwealth Court Judge Bernard McGinley said, a Commonwealth Court judge. That's the lowest of the on the rung. Bernard McGinley, don't say anything, but you can hand them a document. Why? Well, it's voter intimidation. If you're talking about future elections and photo IDs, that may turn people off. What are you talking about? This judge's ruling marked the third consecutive election in which enforcement of the law has been blocked by court order. The constitutionality of the law is being all right, okay. As I think about it, and I wasn't planning this, ladies and gentlemen, the Liberty Amendments, my book, the last proposed amendment deals with this. The last proposed amendment in the book. Let me see here if I can find it fast enough. I'm sure I can. Everybody, sing show tunes while I find it. Here it is. It's called an Amendment to Protect the Vote, Chapter 11, Section 1. Citizens in every state, territory, and the District of Columbia shall produce valid photographic identification documents demonstrating evidence of their citizenship issued by the state government for the state in which the voter resides as a requirement for registering to vote and voting in the primary or general election for president, vice president, and members of Congress. Holy smokes! A valid photographic ID demonstrating citizenship issued by the state? Oh, my God! The horror! Section 2. Provision shall be made by the state legislatures to provide such citizenship-designated photographic identification documents at no cost to individuals unable to afford fees associated with acquiring such documents. Hey, but the problem is they might be free, but how are they actually going to acquire them? I mean, maybe they live in a hovel under a tree. Hey, how are you going to get them the ID? I have an idea. We'll get them out along with free cell phones. What do you think of that? Do you think then the people will have IDs? Oh, I think so. Section 3. Early voting in any general election for president, vice president, and members of Congress. Notice this all affects federal elections. The states can do whatever they want on state elections. Shall not be held more than 30 calendar days prior to the national day of election, except for active duty military personnel, for whom early voting shall not commence more than 45 calendar days prior to the national day of election. And then Section 4 and 5 and so forth. So, this is another systemic change that's needed because of creepy little judges and advocacy groups that are constantly undermining, the vote, and I really don't give a damn if citizens vote or not. And so that's one of the suggestions there. Well, we're going to come back in a moment, and Charles Krauthammer, much like George Will yesterday, he's troubled. He's troubled that the President of the United States isn't following the law, that he might be conducting himself in ways that usurp the Constitution of the United States. Then surely the great Dr. Charles Krauthammer would agree with me, correct? We're about to find out. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
So we have another famous conservative columnist, Charles Krauthammer. Very nice man. I've met him, by the way. Remarkable man, really. He's paralyzed most of his body, and he gets around, and he drives, and he's a remarkable thinker. I don't always agree with him, and my disagreements usually are less substantive and more strategic. But that said, he's a remarkable man. Nonetheless, his column is, Can Obama write his own laws? Much like George Will the other day. Now, the key here is not what he says. The key is going to be, seriously, what I say about what he says, because something's missing. As a reaction to the crack epidemic of the 1980s, many federal drug laws carry strict mandatory sentences. This has stirred unease in Congress and sparked a bipartisan effort to revise and relax some of the more draconian laws. Traditionally, meaning before Barack Obama, that's how laws were changed. We have a problem, we hold hearings, we find some new arrangement ratified by Congress and signed by the President. That was then. This Monday, Attorney General Eric Holder, a liberal in a hurry, ordered all U.S. attorneys to simply stop charging nonviolent, non-gang-related drug defendants with crimes that, while fitting the offense, carry mandatory sentences. Find some lesser, non-triggering charge. You might do that without evidence, for example, the amount of dope involved. In other words, evade the law by deceiving the court if necessary. If the companies that I represent in federal criminal cases did that, said former Deputy Attorney General George Terwilliger, they could be charged with a felony. But such niceties must not stand in the way of an administration's agenda. Indeed, the very next day it was revealed the administration had unilaterally waived Obamacare's cap on a patient's annual out-of-pocket expenses, a one-year exemption for selected health insurers that is nowhere permitted in the law. It was simply decreed by an obscure Labor Department regulation. And that followed a excuse me, I apologize. And that followed a presidentially directed 70+% subsidy for the insurance premiums paid by congressmen and their personal staffs under a law that denies subsidies for anyone that well off, which came just a month after the administration's equally lawless, wait a minute, the administration's lawless suspension of one of the cornerstones of Obamacare, the employer mandate, which followed hundreds of Obamacare waivers granted by Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Supercilious to selected businesses, unions, and other well-lobbied very special interests. Nor is this rule by decree, hold on, he calls it rule by decree, restricted to health care. 2012, the Immigration Service was ordered to cease proceedings against young illegal aliens brought here as children. Congress had refused to pass such a law, the DREAM Act, just 18 months earlier. Obama himself had repeatedly said the Constitution forbade him from enacting it without Congress. But with the fast approach of an election that could hinge on the Hispanic vote, Obama did exactly that, unilaterally. This is Krauthammer. He says the point is not what you think about the merits of the DREAM Act or of mandatory drug sentences or subsidizing health care premiums for 175,000 a year members of Congress, or even whether you think governors should be allowed to weaken the work requirements for welfare recipients. The point is whether a president charged with faithfully executing the laws that Congress enacts may create, ignore, suspend, or amend the law at will. Presidents are arguably permitted to refuse to enforce laws they consider unconstitutional, but they're forbidden from doing so for reasons of mere policy, the reason for every Obama violation listed. Such gross executive usurpation, disdains the Constitution, circling it. It mocks separation of powers, and most consequently, it introduces a fatal instability in law, fatal instability. If the law is not what is plainly written, but is whatever the president and agencies decide what's left of the law. Wow, that's pretty heavy stuff. It goes on, too. So Charles Krauthammer is accusing Obama and his sycophants of lawlessness, of rule by decree, of executive usurpation, of violating separation of powers in the Constitution, and of causing fatal instability in the law. Now, I don't know. Those seems to me, impeachable offenses. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I know that's not going to happen. And it's not even my point. Like with George Will's column the day before. I mean, these are damn near high crimes and misdemeanors, folks. Now, other than, venting and writing a column about it. What can we do about it? What are we going to do about a lawless president who usurps the Constitution, who violates the separation of powers, who introduces a fatal instability into the law, who usurps the Constitution? What do we do about a president like that? That's serious stuff. Well, Krauthammer doesn't tell us. And yesterday, Will didn't tell us. What do we do? Do we do nothing? And if we do nothing, how much more of this is going to go on? Let me suggest to you it's going to continue to go on, and it's going to get worse, no matter what these men write, because nobody seeks to engage and end it, or at least fight it. The first paragraph of my new book, The Liberty Amendments. I undertook this project not because I believe the Constitution, as originally structured, is outdated and outmoded, requiring modernization through amendments, but because of the opposite. That is, the necessity and urgency of restoring constitutional republicanism and preserving the civil society from the growing authoritarianism of a federal leviathan, which is exactly what Will and Krauthammer are talking about, but for which they have no suggestions. This is not doomsaying or fear-mongering, but an acknowledgement of fact. The statists have been successful in their century-long march to disfigure and mangle the constitutional order and undo the social compact. To disclaim the statist campaign and aims is to imprudently ignore the inventions and schemes hatched and promoted openly by their philosophers, experts, and academics, and their coercive application on the citizenry by a delusional governing elite. And their handiwork is everywhere. Just open your eyes. It's everywhere. A centralized and consolidated government with a ubiquitous network of laws and rules, actively suppressing individual initiative, self-interest, and success in the name of the greater good and on behalf of the larger community. Nearly all will be emasculated by it, including the inattentive, ambivalent, and disbelieving. Unlike virtually every other person who comments on what's going on in this country, who sees it as perilous, as dire, I'm suggesting we turn to the Constitution to save the Constitution.
This is Radio Free America on The Mark Levin Show. Call now, 877-381-3811.
Mark Levin, author of numerous New York Times best-selling books, Men in Black, Liberty and Tyranny, and Ameritopia. Now comes the Liberty Amendments.
This book is what we do, what I do behind this microphone, what we discuss day in and day out. And it answers the question that you ask. Mark, what can we do? Well, this is my answer.
The Liberty Amendments, new from Mark Levin.
When you read this book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, it gives you hope. It gives you some inspiration, and we need it. And that's why I wrote it.
Rush Limbaugh on Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments.
It's a wonderful book. He proposes 10 amendments that simply reaffirm the original intent of the Constitution and then gives a thorough explanation for why each amendment is, in fact, justified and traces it back to the days of the founding.
This year's must-read, Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments, now on sale everywhere.
Boom. And by the way, let's see. By my clock, now I'm on the East Coast, obviously, it's what? It's about 6:35 p.m., give or take. 6:35 p.m. That means in 2.5 hours, wherever you are, if you're listening live, in 2.5 hours, there's a 1-hour special on the Fox News channel, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. I think if you're listening to this program right now, you're going to love it. I don't overstate things. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And, of course, I've noticed on my social sites that people like to keep commenting on my glasses. Most of you like them. My father hates them. I bought these glasses, I have to even talk about this, about 18 months ago because I couldn't find my other glasses, which I did wind up finding. But these glasses are very comfortable. They're basically plastic, and they don't hurt my nose. That's why I wear them. It's that simple. Not to look one way or another. But you can see them tonight, and I'm sure you'll want to put a comment on these social sites about it. For some reason, I don't know. So, folks, we have diagnosed the problem backwards and forwards, up and down and all around. We know the problem is that out-of-control federal government. And every day we dissect it, as we should. We bring attention to it. But truth be told, there's so much lawlessness going in the federal government, it's almost impossible to keep track of. I'm going to give you another idea of this. I told you the other day that we had a wonderful ruling from a great federal district judge, Royce Lamberth, in Washington, D.C., Landmark Legal Foundation, Little Landmark Legal Foundation, where there are 6 of us, 5 lawyers, working night and day, some weekends, some holidays. And we have more effect, I think, this little foundation, than really almost anybody. And there are a lot of great groups out there working. It's not to put them down, so please don't misunderstand. I'm just saying we're busy. And we filed a Freedom of Information Act request, seemed relatively harmless, with the Environmental Protection Agency almost a year ago now. And the question was simple. I'll cut right to the chase. We wanted all evidence, all information, indicating what the Environmental Protection Agency was doing in terms of preparing regulations, how they were doing it, and with whom they were speaking, particularly outside the agency. We wanted to know, frankly, folks, what groups were bringing pressure to the EPA, and so forth and so on, and to possibly challenge the process. Well, the EPA didn't want to give us the information. Time and time again, they delayed as they were spitting out regulations. Time and time again, the Assistant United States Attorney had one excuse after another. I got a trial. My back hurts. The holidays here. We're shorthanded, and so here we go. But despite the hard work, and it is hard work, of duking it out with the federal government, in this case in particular, the EPA and the Assistant U.S. Attorney, we found that they were utterly dishonest. Mark, what's the surprise? That's not the point. The point is we caught them being utterly dishonest. We wanted all the email and email addresses for the senior officials at the Environmental Protection Agency, including the person who's now the former EPA administrator, Jackson, Lisa Jackson. She's now long gone. And not just the official email, but any personal email or any email under other names where those email were used for work-related purposes. Because it's been clear now, it's been determined that our government, these officials, are operating under pseudonyms and other things in order to avoid the Freedom of Information Act, which is a federal law that was passed with bipartisan support, the purpose of which is to hold the federal government and these agencies accountable. The purpose of which is to provide a single avenue, really there's no other, for we the people to have access to internal governmental information. And the Obama administration, like every other damn imperial administration, has subverted that law. Forget about transparency. Now we're in full cover-up mode. And so back and forth we went. Phony documents given us, all kinds of redactions and so forth. And we noticed, oh, wow, what happened to the kind of email we had requested? Well, they gave us 3 or 4 different responses in writing to it. And then they go to the judge, Judge Lambert, and they say, okay, we're done. We want summary judgment, meaning shut down the case. And we said to the judge, wait a minute, please. Shut down the case? We don't even know if they actually searched the former administrator's files properly. We don't know if they've destroyed them now. Because you see, folks, more than a decade ago, we litigated against the EPA then. They were destroying records. They were erasing servers, despite a federal court order from this same judge telling them not to. They were held in contempt. So Judge Lambert said, in so many words, I'm just paraphrasing and summarizing, after we filed our response to their summary judgment motion, he said, based on the record here, there is some question about the truthfulness of the agency and the extent and accuracy of the search. And we had asked him for the right to file interrogatories and to depose certain individuals, including the former head of the EPA, Ms. Jackson, and he granted it to us. He granted it to us. Folks, this is going on all over this government. Deceit, cover-ups, destruction of information. They don't want we, the people, to know what they're doing. They refuse to comply with black-letter law. This is utterly out of control. And while I appreciate these columnists writing these things, pointing them out, which is very, very important, I am troubled. I am frustrated by a Republican establishment, and that would include the writers and commentators who are appendages to this establishment, showing absolutely no courage. The opposite. When it comes to demanding that something actually be done about it. I'm not talking about a hearing. I'll give you an example on this. So since this information came out, and it was written up in a number of newspapers, the judge's decision, including in the Washington Compost, now, only then, 2 days later, did Darrell Issa and a senator whose name escaped me write a letter to the former head of the EPA demanding access to all of her email accounts that she may have used. She's long gone. The records may have been destroyed. We're going to find out in our discovery. Not Congress. I'm going to find out. Me, myself, and I, and my small group of wonderful lawyers. We're going to find out. And try and make sure the law is enforced in this case. But, we were also involved in the litigation on the immigration issue, insisting all the way up to the Supreme Court with Arizona and other states that Obama and Holder didn't have the power and Homeland Security to rewrite our immigration laws, to start issuing waivers and not deporting people and so forth and so on, to prevent states from protecting their citizens. There's not exclusive authority under the Constitution for that. And the Supreme Court said, oh, yes, there is. The Supreme Court upheld this lawlessness, which is no longer a surprise to me. We were among the first involved in the Obamacare litigation with the wonderful Attorney General of Virginia, Ken Cuccinelli. We also assisted Florida. We went all the way to the Supreme Court. We've been in the circuit courts. And to have this outrageous decision by this Supreme Court under John Roberts, stunning. We were involved in the case challenging Obama's unconstitutional appointment of presidential appointees without the advice and consent of the Senate to the National Labor Relations Board. Won that case. And a bunch of other cases. Mark, why are you I'm telling you this because this is endless. I hear people say, well, let's take them to court. Let's sue them. We are taking them to court and suing. But the whole damn system is corrupt because it's turned on its head. We, the people, are begging for information about regulations they're issuing that affect we, the people. We, the people, have to sit back every June and wait to hear what 5 justices on the Supreme Court are going to say about our futures. We, the people, have to listen to what President Martha's Vineyard, wherever he is, saying that he's going to dictate to us how we live, whether Congress likes it or not. We have to listen to Congress tell us, no, we're not going to use our power under the Constitution, the power of the purse, to put an end to this lawlessness. And we just sit here, dumbfounded and glum-looking. What are we going to do about it? So we read these columns that tell us what we already know. We already know this. We're living it. We see it. So what are we going to do about it? And what are conservatives going to do about it? In these think tanks and these other groups, they're just going to say, we believe in federalism except when it comes to saving the nation? We believe in federalism except when it really comes to federalism? This process is too hard, so let us not start? What are they going to say? They're going to say nothing. But you can say a lot, because you're going to know more than most people, and I believe you're going to speak out. Because this, Article 5, the second process for amending the Constitution, is a reform whose time has come. Thank God for the Founding Fathers. Thank God for the Constitutional Convention. Thank God for George Mason and all those state conventions that put it right there in the Constitution. That's our heritage right there. You know, there's a fiscal fight in Washington approaching. In fact, it's due to start next month. It's likely to rattle the confidence in the American economy again. I'm talking about the 2014 budget and the debt ceiling debates. More uncertainty. Folks, will you be prepared if our economy faces collapse one day under the weight of government debt and inflation? With gold and silver at 2-year lows, now is the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic catastrophes. By the way, I noticed the stock market has dropped heavily the last 3 days. Well, Goldline's two-way price guarantee program. If the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to replace it at the lower price. If the price of your qualifying purchases go up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has you covered. Call Goldline right now, the only precious metals company I trust, to learn about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special. And for limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that Mark Levin sent you, Goldline will include a beautiful free commemorative medal I personally designed, Franklin and Independence Hall on the coin. I'm personally designing another one, so I know for a fact that it's only a matter of time when this commemorative medal will not be provided anymore. And you'll also get the free investor kit. So call Goldline right now, 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. 1-877-365-2646, 1-877-365-COIN. That's 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
What's the weather on Long Island tomorrow, Mr. Producer?
It's supposed to be sunny and beautiful.
Sunny and beautiful on Long Island tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I love Saturdays. I love noontime on Saturday. I love book review in Huntington, New York on Long Island on a beautiful sunny day tomorrow, where I hope to meet thousands and thousands of you, each and every one of you, and to sign your books. I'm very, very excited about it. And what's the weather for Sunday in Ridgewood, New Jersey? Do you happen to know, Mr. Producer?
It's supposed to be the same. Really nice.
The same? About 80, sunny, beautiful, another beautiful town at bookends at 11 a.m. on Sunday. before church, after church, whatever. It's going to be great. Absolutely great. I can't wait to see thousands of you there, too. And we're doing this with our buddies at WABC Radio. Let us go to Bob, Jackson, New Jersey, the great WABC. Go.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for taking my call, and you're truly an inspiration.
By the way, we invite my buddy Greg Gutfeld to attend either of those to see what these look like. Go right ahead.
All right. The reason I'm calling is just week after week and day after day, I'm just getting more frustrated and frankly sickened by what I see this Republican leadership doing, or should I say not doing.
Yeah.
And, Mark, I'm calling you to ask to help talk me out of something. I'm starting to think about a third party, and I know it's not the right thing to do, but I don't know what else to do because I can't see these guys have the will or the gumption to step up and do anything.
Well, let me ask you this. Why does it matter what starting a third party? I'll give you an example. You have an election there for governor. You got Chris Christie and some backbencher Democrat, correct?
Correct.
Well, why don't you write somebody in?
Well, because I think I know the answer.
Are you going to wind up voting for Christie?
Unfortunately, at this point, I don't think I have a choice.
Okay, well, so you just did it. When I was living in Pennsylvania, I was fairly young, and even here in Virginia, if I really, really can't stand the Republican, I write somebody in. I was just testing you, not in a negative way. If you're not open to doing that, trust me, you're not going to be open to a third party. I have no control over whether there's going to be a third party or not. What I'm arguing about is third party, 20 parties. Let's enforce the Constitution from the bottom up. I'll be right back.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Okay, I'll say what nobody else will say. I hope the Egyptian military destroys the Muslim Brotherhood. And now is the time to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Looking at the Drudge Report, Egyptian military promises to rebuild Christian churches, which, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood burned down to the ground. The Saudi king calls on Arabs to stand with Egypt. Barack Obama doesn't take sides. The Egyptian people hate him. However, it wasn't that long ago when Barack Obama did take sides with the Muslim Brotherhood. So there you have it. Yes, let me say emphatically and unequivocally, and let me be the first, and then the rest will follow. The Egyptian military needs to put down the Muslim Brotherhood. It does it for the entire human race. These aren't innocent protesters with flowers in their hair. These aren't peaceful marches when they attack police stations and so forth, when they're burning down Christian churches. No. They need to be put down. Well, I wanted to get that off my chest. And then, of course, all over TV now, what's the big issue? Area 51. I mean, news stories are leading with this. Area 51. Documents released by the government, not redacted. There was an Area 51. Oh, my God! And? Well, they used to test these supersonic planes and so forth, which is why people thought they were seeing UFOs. No way! But here's the question. What about Area 57? Do you know about Area 57? Google it or Bing it. Interesting. They didn't release any documents on Area 57, did they? No, and they're not going to. So this morning, I didn't open the Washington Compost. That used to be a newspaper. A pretend newspaper, by the way. Not a real newspaper. Just a bunch of liberal crap, to be honest. But anyway, there I am. I turn on my computer, and there's this article in the Washington Compost. NSA broke privacy rules thousands of times per year, audit finds, by Barton Gellman. Oh, wait a minute. I could have sworn the chairman of the NSA told Congress that they're very, very careful about protecting people's privacy rights. Just a bunch of kooks out there worried about nothing. And that this is needed for our security. And if you have nothing to hide, ladies and gentlemen, right, what's the problem? Well, the National Security Agency has broken privacy rules or overstepped its legal authority thousands of times each year since Congress granted the agency broad new powers in 2008. Actually, it didn't grant the agency those powers, but we'll continue. According to an internal audit and other top-secret documents. I'll tell you what, the place is leaking like a sieve, though. Most of the infractions involve unauthorized surveillance of Americans or foreign intelligence targets in the U.S., both of which are restricted by statute and executive order. They range from significant violations of law to typographical errors that resulted in unattended interception of U.S. emails and telephone calls. The documents provided earlier this summer to the Washington Compost by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden include a level... Oh, wait a minute. That's new. That's new. Documents had been provided to the Washington Compost by Edward Snowden. Because remember, he gave them to The Guardian. I forget that guy's name. Goldberg or something. Greenspan. I think it's Greenberg. At The Guardian. But apparently he handed it to the Washington Compost, too. The documents provided earlier this summer to the Washington Compost by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden include a level of detail and analysis that is not routinely shared with Congress or the special court that oversees surveillance. In one of the documents, agency personnel are instructed to remove details and substitute more generic language in reports to the Justice Department and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. You know what that's called, ladies and gentlemen? A cover-up. Let's continue, shall we? In one instance, the NSA decided it need not report the unintended surveillance of Americans. A notable example in 2008 was the interception of, quote, large numbers of calls placed from Washington when a programming error confused the U.S. area code 202 for 20, the international dialing code for Egypt, according to a quality assurance review that was not distributed to the NSA's oversight staff. In another case, the FISA court, which has authority over some NSA operations, did not learn about a new collection method until it had been in operation for many months, and the court then ruled it was unconstitutional. Oh, my goodness. All sorts of stuff going on to protect us. The Obama administration has provided almost no public information about the NSA's compliance record. In June after... Okay. Is this the Washington Compost? Yes, I forgot. They're not going to. This is what soft despotism looks like. This is what an imperial president looks like. This is what the elements of a police state look like. The Obama administration has provided almost no public information about the NSA's compliance record. In June, after promising to explain the NSA's record in a transparent and way as possible, Deputy Attorney General James Cole described extensive safeguards and oversight that keep the agency in check. Quote, every now and then there may be a mistake. Yeah, like thousands of times. Anyway, it goes on. So many of the records aren't secure. And, of course, here's the deal. You know what the defense is out there? We collect so much information on the American people. We collect so many of their phone numbers. We collect so many of their phone contacts, the pattern of their contact. How can we be expected not to make mistakes? After several months of people defending this program, saying, Can you prove, do you have any evidence whatsoever that they violated anybody's privacy? Oh, thousands of times a year. Oh, well, that's not that much. I mean real evidence. Quote, we're a human-run agency. Now, they're making the argument that I would make against this program because I don't think it has a whit to do with security. Listen to this. We're a human-run agency operating in a complex environment with a number of different regulatory regimes. So at times we find ourselves on the wrong side of the line, a senior NSA official said in an interview, speaking with White House permission on the condition of anonymity. Listen to this. They're the government. These are the public officials. And you would think they're in prison trying to get secret messages out to the American people. Yes, the White House approved, but with anonymity. Now they're going to play games. You can look at it as a percentage of our total activity that occurs each day. You look at a number in absolute terms, that looks big. And when you look at it in relative terms, it looks a little different. Oh, I see. So that's what it's come down to. That's what the Constitution has come down to. We're going to collect so much crap that if we only violate your privacy rights a few thousand times a year or a few thousand people, what's the big deal? Look at the percentages. I mean, that's so small. There's no reliable way to calculate from the number of recorded compliance issues how many Americans have had their communications improperly collected, stored, or distributed by the NSA. That's the bottom line. The bottom line really is this. You and I do not trust the federal government with private information about any of us. And I want to know why they need it. And you get these bogus, nebulous, foolish responses. Not, here's a specific time in a specific case in a specific place where this actually worked. Nothing. And we're not going to. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
All right, well, this is odd. Question, this is what Mr. Call Screener writes in here like I'm supposed to figure this out. Question on Luther Martin, Constitutional Convention, Supreme Court. Ron, Edison, New Jersey, the great WABC. Yes, how may I help you? What do you mean about Luther Martin?
What, do you remember him, sir?
Not really.
Well, he was a delegate. He's not a signer, but he was... he thought that the Supreme Court had too much power, and he thought that it should have a jury. And I wondered if you might have figured out, ever seen...
Oh, well, you know, let me tell you something. When you read the different proposals that were being made, and you say he wasn't a delegate, do you remember him? Well, that means he wasn't at the Constitutional Convention, or was he? No. So, yeah, I mean, you can't read every person that put out a pamphlet or wrote a thought. But that said, there were many of them. And the Supreme Court, they had a lot of proposals for that, even at the Constitutional Convention. So it's not like that's particularly unique. I mean, some people thought that perhaps the Supreme Court should be counseled to the President of the United States. That was rejected. Some people thought that the Supreme Court should be part of the Senate. That was rejected. So there were many, many, many proposals.
I see. I just see John Roberts saying he couldn't declare a law unconstitutional because it was a bad law. And
how about if it's unconstitutional?
Well, yeah, it was unconstitutional, but a jury could have nullified that law. That's
all right. There wasn't a jury. Thank you for your call. Okay. All right, let's continue. Here, let's see. A jury could have nullified it. I mean, okay, fine. The man on the moon could have nullified it, but that's not the way it is and not the way it was. How about we go to Greg, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Yes, Mark, I appreciate you taking my call. It's a privilege to talk to you.
I had a question. I have not read the Liberty Amendment, but I wanted to ask, since Obama is such a lawless man, and he doesn't pay any attention to the Constitution unless it happens to agree with him, what force, you say that the Liberty Amendments are using the Constitution to save the Constitution? But
No. I'm saying the state convention under Article 5 is provided for in the Constitution that empowers a collective of the states, at least 2/3, to hold a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments. And I'm giving suggestions on what I consider the kind of amendments, if they were ratified by 3/4 of the states thereafter, that would save the republic. And I'm not saying my idea is the only ideas. I'm saying they are, if you read the book, and if you read each chapter with a significant amount of scholarship behind each one, you will see that they are basically promoting the framers' intent and how they expected this government to function. What's your question?
Well, my question is, since Obama doesn't regard the Constitution anyway, why would it matter?
You know, I'm going to tell you this, Greg, and you make a very good point. I give up. It's over. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing we can do. Zero. Nothing we can do. Obama's lawless. The Supreme Court's lawless. Congress is out of control. We have this massive bureaucracy. It's over. It's over. There's nothing we can do. Okay? That's it. Case closed. Everybody go to sleep. That's not true. Why are we so defeatist? Why do we surrender so easily? Is that what they did at the Battle of Trenton? Maybe I need to read my father's book out loud again. I mean, we've had fellow Americans fighting in the trenches. We've had fellow Americans trenching across Europe in bare feet at the height of winter. We have fought military battles nobody expected us to win, and we've won. And we have fought political battles nobody expected us to win, and we've won. Why is it that the left is so excited about pushing us into tyranny, and too many on our side are so prepared to surrender to it? Barack Obama will not be here forever. We have got to begin a discussion about what option we have to address this tyranny, this soft tyranny. We have to begin that discussion. If we do the what-ifs and woe is me and doom is here and we can't save ourselves, then you've lost. Then you've lost. We have this national depression. I don't mean economic, although I mean that too, but it's psychological. And I'm trying to explain that if the states get together, rather than Congress, the states get together, which is where we have to work, the state legislatures. And they get together and we can hopefully control to some extent that process, fighting off the libs and propose certain amendments for ratification. And when that day comes, when the situation in this nation is so dire, when the people are so disgusted with the federal government, and that day is coming, one day it will, we have to be prepared for it. We have to begin a long journey of talking about it, what's possible. Or we can just say, it's over, and then it is over. I am tired of surrender. I am tired of being dispirited. I am tired, aren't you, of banging my head against the wall. It's time to embrace victory. Slow, but positive and possible. I'm passionate about this, ladies and gentlemen. If we remain in this funk, it will be over. No, I don't have an answer, a magic wand. Nobody does. But we do have a road. There is a path. And we either travel it or we just lament. I'll be right back.
Levin, the George S. Patton of talk radio. Call him at 877-381-3811. That's 877-381-3811.
Mark Levin, author of numerous New York Times best-selling books, Men in Black, Liberty and Tyranny, and Ameritopia. Now comes the Liberty Amendments.
This is a book intended to find a course, a way to address all that's going on around us.
The Liberty Amendments, new from Mark Levin.
When you read this book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, it gives you hope. It gives you some inspiration, and we need it, and that's why I wrote it.
Sean Hannity.
I would describe this as a roadmap for the people in this country, those that say, what can I do? How can we deal with this? It's a roadmap to liberty, a roadmap to return to self-government, a roadmap to reestablish founding principles and restore the constitutional republic we inherited. I highly recommend it.
This year's must-read.
This book combines our heritage, the framers at the Constitutional Convention, the framers at the state conventions, who are always overlooked, and applies it to our current circumstance.
Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments, now on sale everywhere.
You know, I think this is a perfect time to remind you of another time. And I've done this before, and I want to remind you again, because I sense there's a lot of this. From George Washington, The Crossing. During the second week of March 1776, I just sense that people are, no matter what I say, no matter how I say it, some people just are stuck. And I want to help. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I want to help. And the way I can help is look at history. And the way I can help is another brief look at the Battle of Trenton. From George Washington, The Crossing. During the second week of March 1776, General George Washington scored a major victory 4 months before the Declaration of Independence was signed. He forced the British to leave the city of Boston where the spark of the revolution had been struck. Keep in mind, the British were the strongest military force on the planet. Washington had the heavy cannons that Colonel Henry Knox and his men had valiantly brought from Fort Ticonderoga and placed into position in Dorchester Heights, a piece of hilly land projecting into Boston Harbor. He'd fortified the two highest hills, Bunker and Breed's Hills, and bombarded Boston and Boston Harbor with deadly shell fire daily. The constant American bombardment convinced General Lord William Howe, commander of the British Army in Boston, that only an evacuation of the city would save his troops from a military disaster. So in the following days, Howe loaded 9,000 soldiers and their supplies on nearly 100 ships and sailed away, apparently headed for Halifax, Nova Scotia. The remaining Boston residents wildly hailed the American victory, but Washington didn't partake. Instead, he stared out the sea, wondering about the real destination of Lord Howe and the Royal Army. General Washington couldn't believe that Howe was really en route to Halifax. With all the troops, ships, and war material the British had at their command, a movement to Nova Scotia would be a foolish mistake. It seemed to him a more realistic possibility that Howe might risk an attempt to take New York City and its great seaport. The loss of New York City would be a terrible setback for the Americans. To check such a potential British maneuver, Washington rushed his troops overland from Boston to New York. He sent his men digging entrenchments from the Battery to the northern tip of Manhattan Island. Washington guessed right. Late in June 1776, the missing British fleet appeared. Lord Howe had more than 100 ships loaded with thousands of British and Hessian troops for an attack on New York City. And so the story begins. They attacked and smashed through the American force stationed on Long Island by Washington to repel any attempt by the British to take New York City. And before the overwhelming English assault, the colonial army was forced to fall back. A valiant rearguard delaying action by Delaware and Maryland Continentals, commanded by General William Alexander, Lord Stirling allowed the retreating Americans enough time to safely reach George Washington's entrenchments at Brooklyn Heights. The British continued their assault on the Americans. With this back to open war and outnumbered, Washington was in danger of losing his entire army. He ordered his men to gather all the boats they could find and bring them to the East River at dusk. Colonel John Glover's regiment of Massachusetts fishermen began the enormous task of transporting the American troops at night in a rainstorm to Manhattan Island. It was done so quietly the enemy never knew it was happening. The Americans got away with all their guns, horses, food, and ammunition. Washington took one of the last boats to cross as the foggy dawn lifted, and Howe and the Redcoats found Brooklyn empty. The British pressed their assault on the Americans, forcing General Washington to retreat further from his positions in Manhattan, leaving Fort Washington on the New York shore and Fort Lee on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River to defend themselves against the entire British Army and Navy. So the two forts fell to the Redcoats in quick succession, with the loss of large quantities of valuable supplies and 2,600 American officers and men taken prisoner. Having now lost Long Island, Brooklyn, and Manhattan to the enemy, Washington realized General Howe's next target would be the capital of the Revolution, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania itself. His plan called for reaching Pennsylvania before the British. On November 12, 1776, Washington led 3,000 men across the Hudson River into New Jersey. General Lord Cornwallis, commanding 10,000 British and Hessian troops, quietly followed, confident they'd catch and destroy the Americans in a short time. And pursuing the rebels relentlessly, they didn't allow them to rest. While the weather turned cold and steady, chilling rain fell heavily. Weary, disheartened, sick, poorly equipped, with losses from death and desertion growing daily, Washington's little army became smaller and smaller. It retreated westward across New Jersey. A pursuing British officer wrote, quote, "Many of the rebels who were killed were without shoes and stockings, and several were observed to have only linen drawers, also in great want of blankets. They must suffer extremely." And they did. But they struggled onward. Barely keeping his exhausted army ahead of the onrushing British, Washington reached the Delaware River on December 8, 1776. He ordered his troops to seize and destroy all the available boats in the area, except those he needed. Then they crossed into Pennsylvania. With the river between his troops and the British army, Washington halted the retreat and turned to his tired, ragged army to face the enemy. Utterly exhausted, freezing, and starved, they awaited the next move by the Redcoats. And now it started to snow. Large pieces of ice began to form and float downstream. Fortunately for the Americans, General Howe decided his army would not take the field in the dead of winter. Why bother? According to all reports, there would be no rebel army left to face his men come spring. As 1776, a year of terrible suffering and humiliating defeats, drew to a close, the American cause seemed doomed. The revolution was crumbling. Thomas Paine, the author of the very popular pamphlet Common Sense, joined Washington's army as a volunteer. And during the retreat across New Jersey, he wrote a very powerful essay, The American Crisis. It so impressed Washington. In fact, it impressed him so much he ordered it read before each regiment. It began, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in the crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." Very important. Washington sadly wrote to his brother John, I think the game is pretty near up. You can form no idea of the perplexity of my situation. No man, I believe, ever had a greater choice of difficulties and less means to execute himself from them. Quote, unquote. Washington and his exhausted army were encamped on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River at a place called McConkey's Ferry. At Trenton, on the New Jersey side of the river, about 9 miles downstream, was Colonel Johann Rall with 1,400 battle-hardened professional Hessian soldiers. Washington pondered over his maps and plans in his headquarters. He looked out on the river with its floating blocks of ice and the snow-covered hills, and his desolated men gathered around campfires, freezing and hungry. He had to do something. The terms of militia enlistments would run out on New Year's Day. Many of his troops would leave with it, and it was late December. He'd only a few days open to him. He called his staff together for a council of war to outline his plans. He would take his little army across the river and attack Trenton. The officers were enthusiastic about his plan and decided to cross into New Jersey late on Christmas night when they knew the Hessians would be celebrating and least likely to expect any action by the Americans. So very determined to succeed at their task were these men that the passwords victory or death were chosen for the attack. Late in the afternoon on Christmas Day, the colonial troops were ordered to move. They made their way down to the riverbank where, in shivering silence, they started loading the boats. 50 big artillery horses balked at being led onto the boats. They snorted and stamped on the ground with their hooves, rearing up because they were very nervous. 18 cannons weighing a few 100 pounds each had to be loaded and tied down so they wouldn't move once the boats started their journey across the ice-choked river. If a horse made a violent movement or a cannon broke loose from its mooring, the boat, which was overcrowded with troops, would capsize, and all on board would perish because of the freezing water. Colonel Knox had charge of loading the boats, a slow, cold job lasting until 3 o'clock in the morning, and finally they got underway. It was pitch dark. Complete silence was called for. Only the sound of the oars pushing the water and the ice cakes bumping the sides of the boats could be heard. There was no talking or cursing or smoking aloud. That Delaware River on Christmas night, 1776, was a torrent of rushing water blocked with large pieces of ice. The weather was extremely cold with a biting wind and a driving sleet storm covering everything with a coating of ice. The Hessians, upon viewing the condition of the river, could not imagine anyone daring to cross it on a night such as this. They retired to their quarters to partake in hot meals and drink rum. Things were different on the Pennsylvania side of the river. Washington ordered all of the Durham boats that had been seized and hidden away brought out to the embankment point. These boats were like oversized canoes, 60 feet long, 8 feet wide, shallow draft, pointed at both ends. They're very hard vessels to navigate under the best of conditions, and a perilous means of conveyance for troops and their equipment in the dreadful weather of that night. Well, folks, this segment is coming to an end. I haven't finished George Washington, The Crossing, by my father. And what happened? Washington and his small army attacked the Hessians, attacked the British, and defeated them, and captured them. And word went out throughout the country of the great grand victory of the American army under their great commander, George Washington. More and more colonists came to the rescue, joined the army, engaged in the battle. The Revolutionary War was turned around. Many more years left of fighting, hard battles, horrific casualties, and they never gave up. The war lasted 8.5 years. 8.5 years. That's the story of the Battle of Trenton. George Washington, The Crossing by Jack Levin. And I read that to those of you who think there's no hope and there never will be hope. There can be leaders, there will be leaders. And there are leaders in this audience. Some people have left postings on my social sites and said, what good is a book? We can't win with a book. No, you can't win with a book. But you can win with an idea. You can win with an argument. And they're mighty, mighty powerful. Ask Washington, who read Thomas Paine's Common Sense. The Declaration is a document. The Constitution is a document. An entire nation was built around them. Just think about it. Tea Party Patriots. In recent weeks, my friends at the Tea Party Patriots announced their August Recess Toolkit at teapartytoolkit.com. They've reported that thousands of Americans across the country have already downloaded the toolkit and are finding success in engaging with their congressman. So why haven't you taken advantage of this toolkit yet? The resources are invaluable. At teapartytoolkit.com, you'll find talking points, sample letters to the editor, how-to guides on how to host your very own town hall, and now you can even find a schedule congressional town halls in your area. Folks, this is important. With issues like Obamacare and amnesty and out-of-control spending and the upcoming debt ceiling fight, your elected officials need to hear from you right now this month in August. Most Americans are with us on these issues, and we need to remind our elected officials of that at every possible opportunity we can. Please take advantage of these important tools today. They're absolutely free. Go to teapartytoolkit.com right now and download your free toolkit. That's teapartytoolkit.com.
Mark Levin.
Mike, Burbank, California, on the Internet. Go.
Hey, Mark, so I desperately want these Liberty amendments to succeed. But my fear is that while the majority of Americans know how to use the voting booth every couple of years, we don't really know how to be activists. And I'm wondering if the conservative majority in this country reads your book and says, wow, that's wonderful, but I can't wait for someone to make that happen.
I disagree with you. 2010 election is one of the things that gave me heart that we do know how to organize, and our main opposition right now is the Republican establishment. So I don't agree with that. And I would also tell you, we don't need a majority of Americans. We just need enough Americans that we vote more than the other side votes. And then finally, the battle would be a totally different battle. It would be a diversified and disparate battle. Political hand-to-hand combat in state legislative districts and state senatorial districts. I'm not saying abandon the fight at the national level, of course, but I'm saying we have to open a brand-new front, a front that we're very good at. And as the 2010 election has shown, and some of these other off-year elections have shown. The other thing is you can't take a static look at it. You can't say, well, look, we count this many blue states and this many red states and this, that, and the other. The nation is in a very perilous state. There is a lot of change coming very, very quickly. Most of it is extremely destructive. Different alliances can build over time. We have no idea what the nation's going to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now, except that it's going to be much, much worse than it is today. So there will be opportunities to build coalitions. I can't predict today what it's going to look like 10 or 20 years from now, but I can tell you right now that we can be in a position to make a difference.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. You know, I was watching as Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis began releasing Palestinian prisoners this week, as the great Eli Lake writes in the Daily Beast. And I said, why the hell are they releasing these people, these terrorists? One of the prisoners who was released, the Palestinians, one of them, as Eli Lake reports, killed an American. And he points out that for decades the United States has urged foreign governments not to free prisoners who've killed Americans. That seems like a rational policy. Can we all get around that one? I think we can. But a man who murdered an American was freed this week by Israel in a prisoner release deal encouraged by Secretary of State John Kerry. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. He's the so-called president of that part of the Palestinian people. Among those released, and this is Tuesday, as an inducement to the Palestinian Authority to return to peace negotiations, was Al-Hajj Othman Ammar Mustafa, better known as A-Hole, a Palestinian convicted in 1991 of killing Frederick Stephen Rosenfeld, who the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time of his death reported was a former United States Marine and U.S. citizen. Mustafa was sentenced by an Israeli military court to life after he and two other assailants murdered Rosenfeld in 1989, 21 years after the former Marine emigrated to Israel. And according to the AP account of the trial before a military court, Mustafa and two others met Rosenfeld as he was hiking near the settlement where he lived in Ariel. At first, the three men befriended him and even posed for a photo. But minutes after the picture was taken, the three stabbed Rosenfeld and left him for dead, according to their confession. 3 animals. 3 rabid animals. Today, Mustafa is a free man. One of 26 Palestinians released from Israeli jails on Tuesday, the first group of a total of 104 prisoners Israel has promised to free in exchange for Palestinian participation in a new peace process. You know, I'm 55, almost 56. I've been watching this all my life, and I am sick and tired of it. The list of prisoners was negotiated with the Palestinian Authority at the urging of John Kerry. Marie Harf, deputy spokesidiot for the State Department, told the Daily Beast the State Department conveyed the administration's concerns regarding the release of this prisoner to the government of Israel, while recognizing the victim was a dual national of Israel and the U.S. Harf said the Israeli side acknowledged our views, but it was ultimately their decision to determine which prisoners to release. It's very difficult. So, yeah, I mean, which one should we release? The one that killed the 3-year-old baby? The one that slit the throat of the 89-year-old grandmother? The one who threw a grenade in a cafe? The one who shot missiles into the center of the town? Yes, it's difficult. Which terrorist should we release at the urging of John Kerry, just so the Palestinians will come to the peace table? All right, let's cut to the chase here. Look what's going on in the Middle East. Do the Arabs / Muslims, do they want peace? Who are they killing in the Middle East today, Mr. Producer? Each other? Yes, Muslims slaughtering Muslims, and some Christians thrown in, and some Jews when they can get their hands on them. But Muslims killing Muslims, Arabs killing Arabs, Palestinians killing Arabs, Muslims killing Palestinian Arabs, Iranian Muslims killing each other. I mean, that's what's going on. So what is this peace process crap? What peace process? There's no peace process that matters in the Middle East. It's cutthroat. It's bloodletting. What is this fixation with our government? One administration to the next, Democrat, Republican, or vice versa? It's like the whole world is burning. Our country's imploding, and it's always, okay, now, let's focus on the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. What are they talking about? And we want more land, so our missiles don't have to go as far and be as sophisticated to blow up your apartment buildings. Anyway, there you have that. I bet nobody's talked about that today. No, who cares? Yeah. I saw this on the Drudge Report, Fox News. Abortion coverage for Congress under Obamacare. Now, what are they aborting now? It's an issue lawmakers may not want to have to explain at town hall meetings back home. An attempt to fix a problem with the new health care law has created a situation in which members of Congress and their staffers could gain access to abortion coverage, something that currently is denied to federal employees who get health insurance through the government's plan. Abortion opponents say the administration needs to fix it. Abortion rights supporters say the concern is overblown. It's overblown. I mean, yeah, it's like the NSA thing. What are we talking about? 3,000 dead babies? What's the big deal? There's 310 million people. What's 3,000? Now, the abortion complication is a new headache for the... No, it's not. It's not a headache for the administration at all. This administration doesn't give headaches. It doesn't have headaches. It gives headaches. The abortion complication is a new headache for the administration as it tries to shoehorn members of Congress and certain staffers into insurance markets coming later this year under Obama's health care overhaul. It's not an overhaul, it's nationalization. An amendment by Iowa Republican, yeah, we know all that. Last week, the White House Office of Personnel Management said the government would keep paying its share premiums for lawmakers and affected staffers who must leave the federal employee health care system by January 1. Now, that eased a major anxiety for several thousand staffers accustomed to getting the same benefits as other federal employees. Yes, we wouldn't want to put them out like the rest of we the people. No, we have to work every day, pay our taxes to these buffoons and make sure that they're fully covered while we have to look around for health care, right? But the proposed regulation put out by the OPM did not explicitly address abortion coverage. Well, of course not. It's the Obama administration. You know, it used to be a chicken in every pot. Well, under this administration, it's an abortion in every household. Under the health care law, insurance plans in the new markets may cover abortion unless a state passes a law prohibiting them from doing so. Plans offering coverage for abortion, however, may not use federal funds to pay for it and must collect a separate premium from enrollees. Federal tax, okay, whatever. Abortion opponents say the proposal from the Personnel Office would circumvent a long-standing law that bars the use of taxpayer funds for administrative expenses in connection with any health plan under the Federal Employees Health Plan Program, which provides any benefits or coverage for abortions. So the cycle of death, the mindset of death that is the liberal and liberalism, is proposed and promoted at every turn. Every turn. And while this is going on, matters of life and death, over at Martha's Vineyard, we thought we'd take a peek. Our president, who said he will never rest until unemployment comes down. He will never rest until this, that, and the other is being done. He's having a hell of a restful time. According to the New York Post, Comcast CEO Brian Roberts' cocktail party for Barack Obama and wife Michelle in Martha's Vineyard last night was attended by, what did they eat there, by the way? Asparagus? Broccoli? Or did Obama shove his face again with every fried item he could find? Except zucchini. Now, it has to be fried onions, onion rings, French fries, fried fish, fried. Now, guests included newly nominated ambassador to Japan, Caroline Kennedy, doofus, Obama's senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett. Is this like a mistress or something? I mean, I'm not trying to be controversial. This Valerie Jarrett. Have you noticed, Mr. Producer, Valerie Jarrett and Obama are as inseparable as John McCain and Lindsey Graham? Have you noticed that? So who would you say the John McCain and Lindsey Graham is in the Valerie Jarrett, Barack Obama situation? Who would you say that is? Would Obama be Lindsey Graham or McCain, and would Jarrett be McCain? Or I think Obama would be McCain and Jarrett would be Lindsey Graham. Yeah, I think I have that right. Who else was there? Well, your favorite national security advisor, The serial liar, Susan Rice. Another serial liar, the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder. Is everybody on Martha's Vineyard from this administration? It would certainly appear to be the case. Former car czar Steve Ratner. Who the hell is this guy? All over the place. 32 advisors and members of the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. And they're doing a swell job, that Economic Recovery Advisory Board. Vernon Jordan. Does Vernon Jordan ever go away? Apparently not. Who else? Harvey Weinstein. Oh, the billionaire Hollywood movie mogul. You creep. You jerk. That's right, I said it. Larry David, another loser. Carly Simon. Oh, you're so 1960s. California Attorney General Kamala Harris. It's another one. Obama has an eye for her. Didn't he say that she's hot looking or something? Now, despite the power-packed list of guests, a source told the New York Post the reception was very relaxed, no speeches. People were sitting out on the terrace. Well, that's nice. The president was not resting, thinking all the time about how to create jobs. And his next vacation.
Mark Levin.
Arnie's having a fit out there, ladies and gentlemen. I think the bunker is surrounded by liberal deer this evening. And he's the most ferocious 25-pound guard dog you could ever meet. No, I'm just kidding. He is a bundle of joy. Brian, Springfield, Illinois, on the Mark Levin app. How are you, sir?
Hey, Mark, what an honor.
Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that there is still hope. I used to be a bleeding heart liberal. I was a union president for like 12 years of a big municipality in this little blue state. And I heard you yelling at me one day, and my life changed. I'll tell you. Turned it all around. I resigned as president and joined the Tea Party, and I read your books, and I tell you, it can be done. If you can switch me, you can switch almost anybody.
Wow. What was I saying? Do you remember?
There, I said it.
Well, you know, there's a lot of people with very heavily starched white collars and shirts, nicely pressed suits, who go around whispering in hosts' ears, telling them what kind of personalities they should be and so forth. And I've said many times, I'm going to be who I am behind this microphone, and that's passionate. And I'm going to tell you something, Brian. You've made my day, brother.
I tell you what, yeah, because you sound like my grandpa too. I mean, no offense, but he'd tell it to you straight.
Well, that sounds great. No offense taken.
It's great. I mean, I tell you what, you really woke me up. I found out where my dues were going and everything.
Well, I'll tell you what, please don't hang up. I'd like to send you a copy of the Liberty Amendments, and God bless you. I really appreciate it. And isn't that a great call? I'm telling you, folks, come on. You can walk around and surrender to all this, or you can start to enjoy life and engage. That's all. Maybe this book should be a book about positive thinking, not Pollyanna thinking, not putting a smiley face on an impossible situation, because that's not what's in the book. But, you know, maybe this is a book for down-and-out conservatives, constitutionalists, Tea Party activists, Americans generally. If you're down and out and doom and gloom, and by the way, in many respects, I get it. I really do. You hear me from time to time. I feel the same way. But I'm not going to let it devour me. But maybe that's the best way to explain this. There is a way. It's going to be difficult. It's very hard if it can be done at all. But I feel it can be. So this is maybe this is the conservative book on positive thinking. Not Pollyanna thinking, but serious, substantive thinking. John, Plymouth, California, on the Mark Levin app. Boy, if you don't have the Mark Levin app, folks, you don't know what you're missing. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Mark, I got the Mark Levin app, and that's how I listen other than KSFO.
Thank you.
And Robin is probably listening, driving home. And if she hears me and not mention her, I think she's been trying to call. Anyhow,
who is Robin, your wife?
Yeah.
All right.
I had a question for you earlier, but you answered it by reading the piece from Common Sense. But Thomas Paine was wrong, because these are the times that try men's souls.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you that I got about halfway through the Liberty Amendments last night, and I primarily and have advocated for years the repeal of the 17th Amendment. Mm-hmm. And you will be happy to know that a few years ago, I contributed to J.D. Hayworth's campaign. We lost. But I live in California and interested enough in the welfare of this nation to know that Juan McLean was not the person to...
Now, isn't it interesting, John, that Rove and others, they don't speak out now about how they had that wonderful primary victory over J.D. Hayworth. He was trashed by National Review, too, and so many others. I mean, that would have been a very important victory. And now we have John McCain, who's now Obama's favorite senator, and so forth and so on. Thank you for your call, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be right back.
This is Radio Free America on The Mark Levin Show. Call now, 877-381-3811.
Mark Levin, author of numerous New York Times best-selling books, Men in Black, Liberty and Tyranny, and Ameritopia. Now comes the Liberty Amendments.
This book is what we do, what I do behind this microphone, what we discuss day in and day out. And it answers the question that you ask. Mark, what can we do? Well, this is my answer.
The Liberty Amendments, new from Mark Levin.
When you read this book, The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, it gives you hope. It gives you some inspiration, and we need it. And that's why I wrote it.
Rush Limbaugh on Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments.
It's a wonderful book. He proposes 10 amendments that simply reaffirm the original intent of the Constitution, and then gives a thorough explanation for why each amendment is, in fact, justified, and traces it back to the days of the founding.
This year's must-read, Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments, now on sale everywhere.
Now, as soon as I get off the air tonight, in less than 30 minutes, those of you listening live, as soon as I get off the air, you'll want to turn on the Fox News channel. A 1-hour special, audience special, on Sean Hannity's excellent television show. And I will be there for the entire hour. We'll be talking about this in ways I probably haven't been able to do on the radio thus far. And it's a magnificent audience. Many, many people you know and are familiar with and will support. Conservatives. And they have some, tough questions that they pose to me, and I answer them. You'll particularly want to look at my glasses, apparently, because that seems to be a big debate subject. But seriously, it's a lot of fun. I think you'll find it extremely interesting. And if you're going to go out to a movie or go out to dinner or what have you, you may want to record it or TiVo it, because I think you'll like it. So that's Hannity in about 25 minutes from now, Fox News Channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and all times in between. Also, tomorrow, Saturday, bright and sunny, a beautiful, really like a fall day in Huntington, New York on Long Island at Book Review. Beautiful little town. You might want to bring your whole family. I hope to see you there. I hope to see you there, meet as many of you as I can. Let's show up in force, and I will sign the books that you purchase at the store there. And they're very nice people there. The next day, Sunday, this Sunday, another beautiful day like a fall day in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and another beautiful little town with great restaurants and so forth, so you can make a day of it if you'd like. And the bookstore is Bookends, a great store with great people, and it's Sunday at 11 a.m. So I hope to see you there, too. You can hear Barney is all excited about it. Those of you who can't make the book signings, which is most of the country, feel free to go to Premier Collectibles. I've signed books for you if you're interested, for yourselves or as gifts or what have you. And you can check that out. And let's see, is there anything else that I missed? And, of course, Amazon, if you're sitting at your desk and you don't want to leave. But, folks, the book is everywhere now. It's at Walmart, it's at Costco, it's at Sam's, it's at BJ's, it's at Target, it's at Barnes & Noble. It's at the airport. It's in grocery stores. It's in independent bookstores. So it's everywhere. It must drive the libs nuts. I hope so. Nuttier than they are already. Let's go to David, Tampa, Florida, the great WFLA. Go.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. The great one. And I just want to say you're our Thomas Jefferson.
Well, you're very, very kind. Thank you. I wouldn't say that, but go right ahead.
You've really inspired me with the Liberty Amendments. I ordered 6 copies of it.
Holy
and
mackerel.
on Tuesday, I presented to a local 912 group there in Tampa, and initially they were a little skeptical because they were pretty despondent over everything that's going on, but I used a line from your father's book and told them about the bloody feet, the trail left by the bloody feet of the marchers to Trenton, and said, we're not there yet, so we need to keep fighting. And that really inspired them. In fact, 3 of the copies of the books walked out the door. People wanted to borrow them to read your book. So, and the other ones I gave to the library.
No, aren't you nice? You know, here's the thing, David. We have to begin discussing this, or we're just going to keep throwing our hands in the air. And you said they were despondent, and these are activists, and they're despondent that there's no way out. And you know, I just want people to understand this is a process. The process goes from an idea to an argument, to persuasion, to expanding, to making the case over and over, as many places as we can. We are an army of millions. We are an army of tens of millions. And then when conditions present themselves, it's like, you know what it's like, David? It's like, how do you get a job? Well, you don't get a job sitting around thinking about getting a job. You don't start a business sitting around thinking about starting a business. You got to actually, first of all, have some ideas. And then when you have some ideas, you have to talk to other people. You talk to other people, and that leads one thing to the next. Networking and so forth. The same applies when it comes to our political system. And so what I'm suggesting is not only do we fight them in Republican primaries, for Congress and the Senate and lobby them on the Hill. I'm not against any of that. This doesn't foreclose any of that. But I'm also saying we have a fundamental problem with our system. This is not our constitutional system. It's something foreign. And that if we don't start addressing it, we are going to be despondent and worse as far as I'm concerned.
But, sir, it's very important that people understand that this is not just a one-time battle. It's like even if we win this, you still have to keep fighting because they will keep coming back and keep coming back. We have to be vigilant at all times in order to maintain freedom.
You're very, very impressive, sir. How old are you?
I'm 45, sir.
And may I ask you what kind of work you're in, if any?
I work in IT, in computers.
Well, you are sharp, and I like your motivation. Don't hang up. I want to send you a signed copy of the Liberty Amendments. Thank you, my friend. Just think about thousands and thousands of people like David. That would help change the country right there. Absolutely would. Let's go to Mike, Modesto, California, the great KSFO. Go.
Hey, Mark, it's just such an honor to talk to you again. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me say this first before I just had a quick little observation, you know, based on all the stuff you talk about, because I'm not just a student, I'm a disciple. Believe me, brother. And
thank you.
I just want to say that you bring it every night, man. I just got to give you props for that, because every night, I mean, the passion comes through, but every night you bring it on the radio. I don't think you get enough credit for that, because that's a tough job, and you do it every night. I can't wait. It's can't miss radio, I got to tell you that.
Well, you are great, Mike. I really appreciate it.
And I can't wait for my book to come in. I pre-ordered it. I read the first chapter, man. I'm so excited. I just can't wait. So my observation was I wanted to get you to comment in the only way that you can. It's nothing brilliant. I just was thinking that what the left has been so successful at doing over the years is, as far as they go to the left, no matter how far they go, they're able to drag the middle with them. So therefore, the right looks like it's further from the middle. You know, you see what I'm saying? So therefore, the right looks like they're extreme. Actually, they haven't gone anywhere. They're more to the Constitution. I mean, the real conservatives are, like you talk about. So therefore, the right looks like they're polar opposites of the far left, but they're really not. They haven't gone anywhere. So
you know what? You know what? I have never thought of it in those plain terms, and you really are right on. And I'm going to tell you something. Not only do they pull the center more to the left, the so-called center, but this is where the Republicans fall down because they move with them, and that's your point. Okay. Meanwhile, those of us who talk about liberty and the Constitution and limited government and so forth, because they've pulled so many people, including the Republican Party, so far to the left, that we're the ones that are said to be out of step because we haven't been pulled. That's quite right. That's very good, Mike. I'll tell you what, man. You're waiting for your pre-order. I'm going to send you a signed copy so you can get it soon, okay?
Oh, wow. That'd be awesome, man. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it.
You're very kind. Don't hang up. Wow, we're getting some good calls tonight, aren't we? And by the way, politely or intellectually challenging what I'm saying, I want to have it. As a matter of fact, when you turn on Hannity tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Fox News channel, you're going to see there's some challenges by conservatives. It's polite, you know, it's pleasant, but there's some back and forth and a lot of fun. Brian, Clinton Township, New Jersey, the great WABC. Go.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
All right, my friend.
Thank you. I just had to call you and tell you, you know, what a true inspiration you are and a voice of real conservatism on the radio. Because of you, I've called my local congressman to urge him to stand strong against Obamacare. You know, you provide the best gift anybody could ever give, and that's the gift of hope. It's like you've given us the hammer. All we got to do is build the house. We've got to get together and take our country back.
Well, you are very, very kind, and with people like you, I have no doubt that one day we'll succeed, my friend. And God bless you. You take care of yourself. Now, folks, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your accolades. I really can't, but it's not me. And I'm guessing that people hear this who are driving, oh, my God, there's another one. So I always tell Mr. Call Screener, don't just put people on who are going to praise me. Don't I tell you that, Mike? Oh, see, he's laughing because I tell him it all the time. But you know what's hard to find? Liberals who will have a debate. Typically, they're snarky. They're not very intelligent. They're rude. They're mean. We get one really once in a long while. Jack, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Mark, congratulations on your book. I called because you had made the point about what's going on in the Middle East, and I realize the subject is this beloved country, but for all the years that these stupid people out there have been blaming Israel as the source of all the trouble in the Middle East, who have said, if only Israel wasn't there, if only justice was meted out to the Palestinians, it would be a paradise. All would be well. Well, what's going on now, and in Syria, and for very many years, in Yemen, and just forever. Mark Twain wrote about troubles in the Middle East. Puts that to a lie. And not one intellectually dishonest thought would get up and say, you know, we should reconsider. maybe we're wrong. Maybe we shouldn't push for yet another Arab country, another Arab state, which will be a source of yet more heartache and trouble, not a one voice. So I thought I'd make the point.
Yeah, you know, it's an excellent point. And as if the Israelis also and the Palestinians don't have an agreement, then there will continue to be a hostility. You know what? We just have to accept the fact. I hate to say this, Jack. We have to accept the fact that there's so much hate that still exists for the Jews. There's so much contempt for Israel because that little country has shown what is actually possible, civilization in the middle of the desert, that the barbarians and their supporters throughout Europe and even in this country are going to continue to attack them. It is a sad and horrible fact, and it's backed up by history. All right, quickly, the liberal media in this country really are out of control, and they're not interested in informing us. They're interested in deceiving us. And I came across a website called liberalmediabs.com, and that makes it painfully clear the so-called news media don't report the news at all. They have two main goals: to destroy conservatives and shove Obama's radical agenda down our throats. Take a minute and check out liberalmediabs.com. They have a little quiz on there so you can see how good you are at distinguishing facts from liberal media fiction. Liberalbs.com has glaring examples of just how radically leftist the media are. Now they're nothing more than mouthpieces for the Obama administration. It's Friday, tomorrow's Saturday, the next day's Sunday. Perfect time to go to this great website. liberalmediabs.com. Forward it to your friends, too. That's liberalmediabs.com.
Mark Levin.
What a week. I want to thank you all, my beloved audience, very, very much. The weekend has arrived. We're going to have a lot of fun this weekend, those of us who are able to join me. Don't forget, as soon as I go off the air, go to the Fox News channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 1 full hour. I really think you're going to like it. Here we go. Ray Charles in America for you.
Self, their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make God thy gold refine. Success be nobleness and ever again divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties, over the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good
That's it, folks. The week is officially over. The weekend officially begins. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Keep your chin up, ladies and gentlemen. We're in this together. Good night, Spritey. Good night, Griffey. Good night, Pepsi. And good night, America.